Karolina Sobańska Podcast to program, który towarzyszy Wam od 2018 roku. Rozmawiamy o dobrym, świadomym życiu, śledzimy trendy i dyskutujemy o tym, co dla nas ważne.
My guest today is Atara Valentine, a certified hypnotherapist and behavioral rewiring specialist. Hi, Atara. Welcome.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be here. I know we've talked about this for a really long time and worked together for a long time. So I'm just super stoked for the conversation.
I'm really happy to have you. And I really appreciate the fact that we can connect, even though we're on the other side of the world from one another, which I would prefer to have you here, obviously.
Me too.
But yes, we've been working together for some time, and I did the math, and I realized that we had our first call 2 years ago.
Wow.
It's just crazy how much one person can change, how much the world can change. And I don't know, I just really appreciate that time, and I cannot believe where I was when we started and how it's all evolved. So thank you to begin with.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's, I love what I do because it's such a privilege to actually fully get to know somebody in such an intimate space, because so many of us don't show all parts of ourselves to the world. And I don't ever take that for granted. The level of vulnerability that people show up with and that you've shown up over the past 2 years with me is just such a privilege for me as well, to really be able to understand someone and get to know someone and see all parts of them. So thank you for also just showing up and doing the work and literally being yourself, because that's what everything's actually about.
Well, I think it's really interesting because I remember when we first talked and I just felt this instant connection. And I don't know how much it is about me being able to open up and how much it is about you just being able to hold space for people and making them feel seen and having this non-judgmental space that you create. I think it might be both, might be the readiness of the client and the openness from your side. So this must be an amazing process for you as a coach, and to see people grow and to see them apply the things that you teach them. Very rewarding.
Yeah, it is. And to kind of circle back on what you were just saying, I have to approach everybody differently, right? Because every person's unique. Everyone has their own backstory. Everybody has their own blocks. Everyone has their own things that they even hold back or hesitate on. So if I came into every single session, and we see this a lot, which is why I think a lot of coaches actually aren't successful, because they come in with one agenda. They have one way of interacting with people. So it's either going to click or it's not. Really, because I've had so much extensive training, especially in neurolinguistic programming, which is really taught me how to observe people. It's taught me how to see pretty quickly the internal narratives that are kind of ruling their lives. And it's allowed me to be able to, even in the first instance, kind of clock where somebody's at, just based on their body language alone, based on the tone of their voice. I then adapt to that to meet them where they feel safe, right? That's my job. That's how I create safety. Because if I ever met you and if you were really shy and I was like, hey, today we're going to change your life. And are you ready? Because we're going to get you'd probably freak out and I would never see you again, right? So I have maybe 1 to 3 seconds the first time I open my Zoom and sit across from somebody to determine how I connect with them. And it does have to happen immediately, because people come in with so much insecurity and they come in with such a level of anxiety because they want to be there, but they know that they're going to have to talk about very personal things. So if I make someone uncomfortable in the first instance, I know I'm not going to see them again. So I enter every session with so much respect for where the person is, and I try and meet them there, and then through the session kind of carry them into this other place where we can be very transparent with each other.
I remember when we had our first call, I had known about your work for some time, and I finally made the decision to connect with you, to book a session. I was in I would say a difficult place, or I had a challenging situation in my life. And I remember being so excited to chat with you and to learn the secret ingredient to happiness. I was like, I'm booking this session. I've known this guy for such a long time. I'm sure he's going to tell me something that's going to just blow my mind. Like this one thing that only like the greatest minds apply. And from then on, I'm going to be happy forever. Yeah. I really had this attitude. And I'm sure that many people coming into like therapy or coaching, they're like, they will tell me the thing that nobody talks about that's just reserved for this entitled group. And like my problems will end. Totally. And the fact that I realized through working with you that the work is something that you do every single day and it comes back to the very basics and the fundamentals. It was something that felt at the same time like a relief, but also I was like, damn, so I have to take responsibility.
I know. And listen, so many people don't like that. But the truth is this, like we have no influence really of what's happening out here. The only thing we have control over is the way we relate to everything that's around us, right? So if we're constantly needing someone to change or needing an opportunity to change outside of ourselves in order for us to feel safe or in order for us to feel successful, chances are we're never going to land in the space where we actually feel that thing, right? And I see this so much, and I'm really happy that you said that because so many people come in with this kind of fix me mentality. And the wellness industry preys on that, right? So does the mental health industry, to be fair, right? Like, okay, here's your problem. Here's your diagnosis. Take this pill. You need this forever to feel like a normal functioning human being. I don't buy that. That's not the way that I work with people. I'm interested in why did your brain learn how to adapt this way that you had to do this? What was happening in your environment? What was happening in your internal environment that this is the identity that you had to create to feel safe in your life? And when we have that level of curiosity, especially with ourselves, it's really easy to uncover our patterns and then be able to say, oh, this actually was never me. This is something that I learned, right? And I learned in order to adapt to the environment that I was brought up within. And that's when most of this happens, before literally 0 to 7. Right? Our relationship to our bodies, whether we feel secure, whether we trust, right? Whether we feel safe being autonomous and independent. All of that happens so early. And people don't understand that. They think that every single day, everything's shaping them. And yes, there is an influence, but the reality you're seeing has already been dictated and determined by what you learned when you were a kid, right? So when people say, well, when is the work done? Really, you have to get to a point where it's not work. It's something that you want to do because you want to feel good in your body, because you want to keep growing and changing. And every time you grow and you change, there's going to be something else that needs to be addressed because it's not what your brain wants for you. It wants you to stay in the small space that it feels comfortable within. So you're constantly trying to show up to learn new perspectives. You're constantly trying to show up to teach your brain and your body, this is what I want now. This is what safety looks like now. Not, we have to continue believing this story from when we were a child, because that's why so many people just create the same thing over and over again, right? Because there's no intentionality. We should want that for our lives. We shouldn't want to be lazy with ourselves and put all our energy and our investment into everything else but us. Because how do we expect to land on happiness if we don't even know what we want? If we don't even know who we are, it's actually impossible.
Yeah, but also, as you know, this work can get really overwhelming, especially with the whole self-development, self-growth, or even going further, like manifestation movement. Like there's so many different experts and different ways to get what you want. I feel like this whole space has become, not that there's something wrong about materialistic things, but it's become really materialistic. Like, I just want to have this, and that in my life. One of the reasons why I also connected with you was that I feel like you created your own system that was kind of different than the main narrative that we have in the area. What do you think was the missing piece? You mentioned one thing, which was that we start to blame ourselves for our faults, and then we put labels on it, and we just like land on it and stay the same way for the rest of our lives. Like it's a diagnosis for forever. But what made you feel like you're going to have to create your own system and your own approach to lift people up so that they don't get so caught up in this whole self-growth world where you just get confused?
The fact is this. There is so much information out there, especially when it comes to something like manifestation. And the thread that most people are the most familiar with is the universe grants wishes, right? It's out here. If you're not doing A, B, and C, then you're just not in the right space to have this. You're doing something wrong. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. And it really reinforces shame, right? It's this idea like there's a genie that's granting wishes. And if you appease the genie or the universe or however you look at it, you're going to be given the life that you want, right? And the truth is, because I was the most sought after manifestation coach in the last company I worked with, because I'm still booked out for a year in advance, I've worked with so many people as a result, right? I've had a very full calendar. I see what people actually want, and it's not stuff. People think they want stuff, but all of that stuff is representative of something. It represents a feeling. And they think if they get that thing, it's going to create a new identity for them, right? And that's what I teach. You don't actually want the thing. You want what you associate with that thing, right? You think if you have $10,000 in your bank, you're going to feel secure. You think if you have a partner who looks like this and makes this much money, you're going to feel attractive, right? We can't outsource our identity. And this is what I see people constantly struggling with. And unfortunately, that's how manifestation is taught. Like if you get this pair of jeans that are hard to find, that means that you're authentic and you're worthy and you're doing the work. And if you don't, then you didn't, right? And so people then want to keep consuming more stuff and more stuff and more stuff. And all of a sudden, something that's supposed to be about you actually creating a life that you want so you can feel good within it becomes this new practice that you do to punish yourself and to shame yourself. And I don't like that because to me, that is way too plugged into like corporate greed and capitalistic culture.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of why we should do internal work. So I do respect that it becomes like the training wheels of work for most people. But what I found and why I kind of stopped teaching in that way was I never fully believed it. I never wanted that. I didn't want to manifest a car or manifest a job. I wanted to feel good about myself. I wanted to feel confident in my life. I wanted to feel like I could show up as who I am. And then as a byproduct of that, create opportunity and create the right friendships and then make enough money to get the things that I want. That's the truth. When you move through the limitation, you're going to manifest anyway, right? You're going to get the things that you want. And just by the way, everybody's manifesting, whether you're conscious about it or not. Your reality is yours. You and I, if we walked out and walked down the same street together, we're going to have two completely different experiences, even though the stimulus is exactly the same. That is manifestation because your brain is looking for what it learned to look for. It's trying to find the markers that it needs so you know how to show up in order to stay safe. So you're doing this all the time. So if we don't like the story we're seeing around us, this gives us the opportunity to change it because it does start internally. We can keep going to acupuncture, and I'm not knocking this stuff. I understand why people do it, and it is important because life can be very hectic. But if you're going to acupuncture and then you're getting your green juice and then you're going for your massage and then you're going for therapy and then you're doing all this stuff and then you have a meeting with your astrologer and then you're trying to outsource all of your nervous system safety. You're trying to outsource your nervous system regulation. You're trying to outsource your identity. And actually what's happening is you're paying thousands of dollars to stay exactly the same and become dependent on things outside of you. Yep. You've learned nothing in this process. What you've learned is, when I'm stressed out, I go to my acupuncturist and they fix me. When I'm stressed out, I go to my therapist and they tell me what to do. Where are you in that equation? And that's the basis of my work. Radical accountability, always bringing it back to the self, because that is the only thing that you can actually influence.
I also feel like this is the story that we're being sold, that these things will fix us and make us feel happy. And I feel like also you hit the nail on the head. That was me. Like I felt like totally. I had done everything in the world to have the most perfect routine that's going to make me healthy and happy. And of course, I enjoyed those things to some extent because I talked about it many times on the podcast, that I did so many amazing things, quote unquote, that actually felt like chores.
Yeah.
And I kept becoming more frustrated when they weren't like giving me the results that I wanted, or when I didn't do them, I felt shameful. So it was like a vicious cycle of me just trying to, I don't know, save myself. And I also feel that those tools were very, very valuable because they made me realize that this is not the answer. And one of the parts of the manifestation part, we talked about the materialistic aspect, but I also believe that at least I can talk for myself, I was so caught up in looking for tests from the outside world, from the ways that I acted badly. Whenever there was a situation I didn't like, I was thinking, okay, what triggered that? So I failed the test, which means that I have to look for a wound and I have to find the first memory. I feel like I was trying to go through this whole process all the time, every day, and I didn't have anyone to guide me through it. And it just felt like, oh my gosh, like all I do is challenge myself, and I failed tests, and I don't want to live this way. I just wanted my life to be a bit more smooth, just trusting, compassionate towards myself. So I feel like the question is, how can we approach this whole process with more ease and compassion, and just still be able to enjoy our life while developing, growing, and working through the things?
Yeah. So there are a couple things that I always say to people when they start this work, because it is really easy to judge yourself. Because we're living inside of our own bodies, we have this belief that we should know and understand every part of ourselves. But the truth is, there's been very little value placed on that. If we think about how we're raised, most of us are raised to be convenient for other people. Your dad had a long day at work, so be quiet when he comes in. If you don't do this, you're going to get this. I don't like that. Don't do that again. Right? That's what happens. It's not about us. Our personality is really a means of connection and protection, right? We adapt to the environment so that we can be safe, so that we can belong, so we can be a part of it. Some of that gets pushed down into your shadow, and the parts that get appraised or rewarded, they get pushed forward. That becomes your persona or your personality, right? So we're already fragmented. And we know on some level, and this is the kind of dissatisfaction that happens as we get older, when we keep noticing ourselves doing the same thing, we keep seeing the patterns that we've always done repeating over and over, and we start getting frustrated and go, why does this keep happening? Now, when we say that, we don't say, why does this keep happening just about these people, right? We say, the people who are involved. We get frustrated with ourselves and we get ashamed of ourselves, and we think, see, this keeps happening. There's something wrong with me. And we take it very personally. But it's not you, it's your programming. If people could understand that, right? The way you learned to see the world was taught to you. The way you learned to view yourself was taught to you. The things that you value and believe were taught to you by other people for the convenience of other people. And that's why it's so easy to believe, oh, the universe is testing me, because we are used to having an authoritative figure telling us if we're doing a good job or a bad job, right? But part of the problem with that is, if we can't take responsibility and accountability for the way that we're showing up and understand what's happening internally, because this isn't something we get educated on, right? It's hard to regulate ourselves to create enough safety to actually change, right? Because that is something that should have been modeled growing up. And that's called co-regulation, right? If you're crying because you're upset when you're a child, if your parent can come and sit with you and be very calm and not judge you and hold you and relax you, that's actually how you learn to regulate later in life. That turns into self-regulation because your body learns, oh, when something like this happens, I have support. Oh, I don't have to be afraid because they're not afraid, right? Now, for most of us, that's not what happens. People say, oh, you're too dramatic, you're too this, you're too that, your emotions are too big. I hear this all the time with people. And I'll always say to the client, because it does make us feel like we're the problem, right? So I'll say, what is your parents' relationship like with their emotions? How do they deal with their emotions? And literally 9 times out of 10,
do they?
My parent is an alcoholic, right? So they actually don't deal with their emotions. That's why we feel like we have this flaw, because there was a hole in the way that we were raised. And if a parent doesn't know what to do, they're not going to say, I'm really sorry. I don't know how to be a good parent to you right now, because it's making them feel an insecurity. They're going to go, you're this, or you're making me feel this, or your emotions are too big. And then we believe that, right? So that's why when we get tested, it feels truthful or factual, because we're used to taking the blame for everything.
It's so powerful. And I really resonate with what you're saying, because a huge part of what we've been doing together was regulating the nervous system. And that's why I started off by saying that it made me relieved, and also it made me laugh in a way that I was like, oh my gosh, like baby steps, first steps, just feel whatever you're feeling and let it go. And there was no secret ingredient. It was just a simple daily practice not to over-identify with your thoughts, with your feelings, being able to sit with them. Also, I might digress, but I feel like many of us think that something's inherently wrong with us.
Totally.
That everyone is fine and we can't figure out how to deal with life. We don't know how to do life, or however you want to call it. And then you talk to people and you realize that everyone is dealing with the same stuff. And we're telling ourselves stories based on the way that we interpret our reality. We are super reactive. And just by pausing for a few minutes every single day, your whole life might change. And that sounds like a motivational speech or something. But this is literally like, I'm smiling because it's so true.
Yeah, it is true.
1, 2 tools and your life shifts instantly.
Well, because a lot of people don't have self-awareness, right? That's part of the problem with this process for most people, is just like you're saying, they think something needs to change. They think they're supposed to take this big leap to change everything. And then their nervous system freaks out because they have no preparation for it. And to be honest, they don't even know what they want or why they want it, right? They're just doing reactive change. Ooh, I'm uncomfortable, so I need to do this. I feel fat, so I need to lose weight. I feel lonely, so I need to find a partner, right? That's not a great motivation, because you're just trying to get away from actually the lesson that you need to learn so that you can find an aligned partner, so that you can feel confident in your body, right? And so what happens is people burn out very quickly because they don't understand where they're going. I call that proactive change. And that's kind of the first step here, is really to teach people self-awareness, because people think that they are, but they aren't, right? And Harvard did a study, and I think several thousand people, and they found only around 13% were actually self-aware. Because self-awareness isn't just about how am I feeling? Self-awareness is also, how am I perceived by other people? And usually people lock into one of those two things. They don't have a good balance of both of them, right? Like a people pleaser or codependent, so hyper aware of how they're being received by other people to the point that there's no sense of self, right? And someone who's very selfish and very motivated by money and just wants to, stomp over people to get to the top, they're going to prioritize their feelings over everyone else's, right? So there's this gap that ends up happening. Yeah. So part of developing self-awareness is having that friendly balance of, how am I coming across in a healthy way, not in a way where you constantly are adapting, right? Because sometimes you are around the wrong people, but also, how am I feeling in this situation? And we have to really create that balance. Then we can begin to ask ourselves, okay, well, why are my relationships like this? Why does this keep repeating? What are the things that I'm doing to create this? Because you're participating, you're 50% responsible. And just FYI, everything in life is a relationship. You have a relationship to food. You have a relationship to people. You have a relationship to work. You have a relationship to money, right? So when you start looking at your motivation, that's where we get to change things. But after we have that, we also have to go, okay, total ownership, total self-acceptance. This is where I'm at. This is how my life feels. This is the level of life I know how to create. Because that's the truth. And that goes for everybody listening to this, right? When you know the level of life that you can create, then you get to look at what's good and what's working. Great, we have a solid foundation. Then you get to fine-tune the things that aren't. And you want to be able to have self-compassion around those things, because the things that aren't good usually aren't good because you never learned to have self-compassion in the first place, right? So usually the biggest holes I see in people's lives is where the majority of their authenticity exists. The things that they're not doing because they weren't supported or they were made fun of, or they don't speak up, even though they have so much to say because they think they're stupid because their dad told them that their whole life, right? So it's really hard for people to have compassion for the things that they've been critiqued for their whole lives. But we have to, just like you're saying, like we have to understand your thoughts are designed to protect you and to keep you in the exact reality you learned to be safe within. They are true in the sense that they are reflective of your current level of life. But they're lies in the way that they can change if you change. They don't have to be true anymore. But you have to get clear on who you are, how you feel, how you're showing up in the world, and what you want. Then we build the bridge to create the new story.
What would you say could be the first step for us to develop self-compassion? Because I feel like it is the entryway to this whole process, because we can do all the things that are being recommended, but from a place of not even punishing yourself, but having it as a task, having it as something to help us fix ourselves. But coming from a place of, I'll do this for me because I am important and I want to feel better in my life.
Yes.
I think it's huge. And it's something that many of us do not relate to at this particular moment.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Self-compassion is really easy and it's really difficult.
Love it.
Right?
Life.
Compassion, we understand compassion because the way you speak to your best friend when they're being hard on themselves, that's compassion. You don't want them to look at themselves that way. You see them in a different way and you want them to see themselves through the eyes that you're looking through, right? It's much harder to do that for yourself because you're judging yourself based on what people thought of you growing up. It all literally does come back down to that, right? I had a session with a client yesterday, actually. And she was like, I started getting in my head and I started with catastrophic thinking again. And she's like, I did catch myself, but I spiraled a little bit. And I said, okay, cool. Like, well, what did you notice? What led up to that? And what would you do differently next time? Right? Because I don't like to give the answers immediately. I want people to land on them themselves, because if they land on it, they're going to retain it better. I can sit here and tell everyone, do this and do this and do this, but there's no emotional resonance, right? Unless they figure it out. So I just have to ask really good questions, right? And so I asked her and she said, well, instead of doing what I did, I would have thought positive thoughts instead. And instead of visualizing the worst, I would have visualized, the best thing. And I was like, that's great. But if you're dysregulated, you actually don't have that power. Your amygdala's already hijacked everything. Now you're operating from a place of fear, right? And when that happens, your prefrontal cortex takes a nap, right? And then your programming comes in. That really base level survival programming. So it's really hard to go, oh no, that's not going to happen. Life is beautiful and there's always a silver lining, right? The key, and same thing goes with self-compassion, right? If you feel insecure in a room because you learned to look around and size yourself up so that you know how small to make yourself to stay safe, it's hard to be like, you're beautiful and you deserve to be here too in that moment. The first step that always needs to happen in order for us to change is to regulate. And it's what people don't want to do. And when I do it with people, they feel, oh, it's cheesy or this is weird. That's the problem. It shouldn't feel cheesy or weird to be gentle with yourself. It shouldn't feel cheesy or weird to take a moment to allow your body to soften and feel safe, right? And that can happen in 9,000 ways. Humming stimulates the vagus nerve. Deep breathing, right? The physiological sigh where you breathe in, then you take a little breath, hold, and then you slowly exhale from your mouth. Like even just deep breathing in general stimulates the vagus nerve. Noticing that you have tension, like you're talking about, taking that pause and going, oh, okay, let me breathe. Let me try and relax my shoulders. Let me signal back to my body that there's not a reason to feel stressed right now, that we're safe. And it takes practice. Right? Just like having an anxiety attack took practice. You got really good at creating anxiety to the point that it became super automatic every time you think you have to talk or do something or show up, right? That's been practiced over and over and over again. It's no different, right? This is going to feel clunky at first. That shows you that that's a weak spot for you. That should make you want to invest in yourself, because once you learn to regulate yourself, then you can expand. Then you can, in a healthy way, move toward the life that you want, move toward the kind of person that you want to be. But you're not going to do it from a place of dysregulation because your body's first priority is always going to be safety. And if you don't teach it that new form of safety, it's always going to go back to the safety that it learned. And for most of us, that's hiding, shrinking, numbing, removing ourselves, isolation, everything that puts us back into a small mindset and nothing that moves us forward.
It's beautiful that you're mentioning all the tools, and I feel like it's great that we have such a plethora to choose from. I wouldn't want to overwhelm anyone with the amount of different solutions and tools that we have, but I feel like once we become more self-aware, we know which ones are going to stick and which ones really serve us day to day. And even today, because of the time difference, we're talking in the late afternoon for me. And around like 3:30, I decided to just lay down for like 25 minutes with no intention of napping, falling asleep or anything, just breathing and being and regulating. And this is actually one of the things I've learned from you like years ago from one of your workshops, that you had to do a quick meditation morning, midday, like not even midday, but like afternoon and night. And I love it. I forgot about it. But when you were saying that we might find some of those practices cheesy, I really felt that. I was like, why am I going to lay down at 3 p.m.? And then I thought, usually this is the time where we crack or we want to grab a coffee or we start getting more frustrated with our work or our brain stops working. And I remember that today. I was like, I just picked one of the tools that I used to judge myself for. And that just makes me change my narrative about my day and my whole reality in like 20 minutes.
Well, because so simple. And that in particular, like there's a guided audio called Recalibrate, and that's what that's about, right? It's literally the time of day, everything starts slowing down. You get that mid-afternoon slump. That's a physiological thing that actually happens. However, because we live in a world that goes, you have to work, you have to keep working, you have to be productive. We're like, I can't take a nap. I have to have another cup of coffee or 3 cups of coffee, or I have to have a Red Bull, right? It's never about taking care of yourself. And then so what we end up doing is when we already are low energy, right? And usually pretty stressed out at that point as well, because we've just been going and going and going without rest. Our brain's been processing everything, right? We've created a state of overload already. Almost every single person I work with, before I worked with them, knocked themselves into like fight, flight, freeze by like 2:00 in the afternoon. And then just kept going. And then they go home. And because they're so burnt out and their nervous system is so exhausted, then they start drinking a bottle of wine, even though they said they weren't going to have a drink that night, or they start binge eating or doing these things, and then they have shame around it. But the truth is, anytime that happens, it's a sign to me that you're not taking care of yourself earlier in your day, right? You're literally losing yourself. Closing your eyes, even just for 10 minutes and breathing, allows your brain to catch up. It allows it to go, okay, this is important. Let's process this. Let's get rid of this. Let's catch up. Let's get back to the moment, right? Instead of just throwing and piling a bunch of things in and expecting ourselves to be 100% efficient all the time. And people are afraid when I say, like, go for a walk when you're on your break. Don't scroll through your phone, or just sit and close your eyes for even 5 minutes, because this isn't relaxing. Scrolling and looking, you're still looking and processing information. You're still hearing. There are auditory cues. There are visual things that you're looking at. You're thinking about it. You're not giving your brain a break. It is so important to pause. Silence is key for growth. Silence is key for learning how to process emotions, for creating stability in your life, because your brain is always working and it needs a moment to catch up.
And it does feel uncomfortable at first, even on a daily basis. I feel like when I have an overwhelming day, I do not want to be still. And for the first few minutes, I'm thinking of ways to get out of this situation. But then the moment clicks where you're like, okay, I'm back. Life is good. And I feel like it's always worth waiting through this uncomfortable time, because we prefer the numbing because it's familiar and it's maybe not comfortable, but it matches the state that we're in. Totally. So it's easy.
That's the key. It's easy because it's reinforced, right? That neural pathway is like a highway, right? It has lights, it's wide, it's paved, it's deep. Disrupting the habit is not. That's new. That's why we have to put a lot of energy behind it. That's why it feels uncomfortable. Even making, like you said, oh, I have to remember to use my tools. Like for so many clients, I'll tell them, make your screensaver, use your tools, or write out what the tool is that you're going to use when you get stressed out because you look at your phone all the time. Because none of this is hard to do, but it's hard to remember to do because we're really good at doing things the way that we learn to. And that's what keeps most people stuck. And then they think they failed. So then they think the practice doesn't work or the coaching's not working or the program's not working. But it's like, no. Your brain is working perfectly. Your brain is doing exactly what it learned to do. You have to meet that. You have to match that, right? You have to teach it something new. It does take time. It does take energy. And that's why a lot of people don't change. They want to go and do ayahuasca and then think that they're going to be a different person forever. Or they just want to microdose mushrooms with no protocol, with no anything. And they think, oh, well, it stimulates neuroplasticity. Well, guess what? That's not always a good thing. You can be reinforcing really negative behaviors. You can be reinforcing really negative habits. Intentionality is key, right? Nothing happens. No change happens without intention. No change happens without energy and movement. And we have to condition our bodies to adapt to the life that we're trying to create for ourselves.
A huge part of this work for me as we're speaking and explaining is regulating my nervous system, is being self-aware, but also is the practice of gratitude. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we focus a lot, I'm talking we, I mean me and you, and I feel like people having a similar mindset that we focus on embracing what we already have, appreciating what we have, noticing what we have. And the question that I have been asking myself for years, and I still sometimes do that, is that how do we balance between being super grateful and appreciative of what we already have and what our life already is, yet still having a different, you want to call it higher vision for ourselves and wanting to, let's say, manifest a different life, a different circumstance? How do you wrap your head around that and still balance it out? Yeah.
Here's why I hate gratitude in the way that we're used to hearing it. Because it's like, well, just say 3 things you're grateful for. And people are like, I'm grateful for these plants because for these roses that are next to me because they smell beautiful. And I'm grateful for my cup of coffee in the morning. And right. And they say things, but they're not actually putting feeling behind it. Right. So how I approach gratitude is more like close your eyes right now. Take a deep breath. Feel yourself inside of your body. Take a moment to appreciate the fact that you're alive. And this is what it feels like to be alive in this moment. Create a real connection. Our bodies are the things we take for granted the most. Like, what if you can just close your eyes and be like, wow, I can feel, I can smell, I can hear, right? And obviously, not everybody's able-bodied, but we all have things to be grateful for, right? We have senses. We get to experience. That's such a beautiful thing. Instead of just, I'm grateful for stuff, like when you write, I'm grateful for my home, why? Can you connect with the why? Can you connect with the feeling that your home gives you, right? Because again, everything's representational, right? So what is it? Is it a feeling of security? Think about that. Have gratitude for that because that's real gratitude, right? It's a state. It's allowing yourself to actually feel the connection that you're associating with these things. And why that's important is it's not about, oh, I'm just so grateful and I never need anything. I'm grateful. I love my house. I love my life. I'm successful. I'm in a successful relationship with somebody that I love. I have great friends. I have incredible closeness with my family after all of these years and all of the work that I've done. But that doesn't mean I'm done. That doesn't mean I don't want to grow more. I don't want to learn more. It doesn't mean that there's not more money that could be made, but there's no point in chasing these things if you don't understand gratitude, because nothing's ever going to be enough, right? And you will burn yourself out at the expense of trying to get more things, thinking the things are going to make you feel something about yourself. So gratitude is a great thing to start paying attention to because it actually puts us in a really abundant place within our body. Because when we have gratitude, that's more connected to the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Rest and digest. We're relaxed. That's where we actually build from. That's safety. That's how our body has to feel in order to change, right? So I have this saying, essentially, Anytime you want something unexpected, you have to give your body something it expects.
What do you mean by that?
And what I mean by that is, if you want to manifest all of this stuff, all of these new things, any kind of change is a threat to your body. Any kind of change creates stress in your nervous system. So growth is stress. So how do you give your body the predictability that it needs so that it feels safe moving? That's why we have practices. That's why we anchor into ourselves throughout the day. That's why we take a rest so we can come back and then come back to our life completely in our body. We have to give our body the structure and the predictability that it needs, right? And so when we talk about something like co-regulation with children, right? Why do you rock a baby? Baby's crying. You pick up a baby, you bounce it like this, or you rock it like this. What's that actually doing?
Oh yeah, people want to calm them down.
Right, calm them down, right? And the reason it works is it's giving their nervous system predictability. Because when you shake a baby like this up and down, it has a rhythm. Right? It's consistent. It's repetitive. When you rock a baby, it has a rhythm. Right? So the body goes, oh, okay. This is consistent. This is repeated, right? It's predictable. That's why it works. What is the equivalent of that for us, right? That's why people do the butterfly hug, bilateral stimulation. It activates both parts of the brain. Why? Because your body goes, oh, there's a consistent repetitive signal. Oh, okay, I can trust this. This feels safe. It also helps both hemispheres of your brain work together, right? But it is repetition. That's why rocking, right? Things like this. It's why rocking chairs are so relaxing. Same thing. That's what we have to remember. If you want to change, you have to meet that change with something that's predictive for your body, right? That's what this is about. And a lot of times that's rest. That's taking your nap to recharge. That's you can rock yourself. You can hum. You could do deep breathing. So, I mean, there's so many things that we can do for free. You can do, tapping, bilateral stimulation, right? All of this is available to you for $0. But the problem is when people have a feeling that comes up, right? Or really an emotion, they immediately turn the emotion to a feeling. They go, oh my God, this is this means this, right? It's a story. And they're filling in the gaps based on what they learned. Their story is, oh, this happens to me because of this, or people don't respect me. Now, all of a sudden, that emotion becomes a feeling. And then they think about how they're disrespected, and it becomes a secondary emotion. And then it becomes a complex emotion. And then all of a sudden, it feels like something they can't deal with, and they can't access the actual emotion in their body because they're so caught up in the story.
Yep. Guilty.
Right. And it's deep. It gets so complicated. When in reality, the first moment you feel dysregulated, you don't think your way out of it. You give your body that predictability. You come back into your body as a result, then you think. That's the part that people miss.
I wonder in practice, it might sound, as we said many times, or I said many times in this conversation, it might become a bit overwhelming. And I'm thinking, should we get used to the fact that we have to kind of, I don't want to use that word, but it comes up as micromanage our internal world and constantly observe what's going on, tag it, label it, notice it, and be very present and aware of the process of, as you said, like noticing an emotion or when it becomes a feeling or a narrative, because it might sound intense.
Yeah.
Like, can I just live my life and be able to feel things and just let them go, or sometimes think something and just let go of that thought too? Or is it the stage where we have to learn to do it and it might feel a little bit, like square and weird for a moment, and then it becomes supernatural and it actually makes our life more easy so that we don't have to feel like, okay, self-growth and self-work or whatever you want to call it, it's something that just requires constant analysis and hyper-presence, because it is a lot.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say to push back on that. The way that you are now also took constant analysis and repetition. That's what laid the foundation. Trying to appease your parents, trying to appease people at school, trying to fit in with your peers, right? That's what's motivating every single thing. So unless you are completely satisfied with if you're like, oh my God, my life's amazing, I would change absolutely nothing, you have to do this because you cannot change what you're not aware of. And most people don't even know their process of why they think the way that they do, right? And I'll say to a client, they're like, oh, I get anxiety attacks all the time. And I'm like, cool, like, how do you know it's time to be anxious? And they're like, I don't, it just happens. And I'm like, no. I want you to, let's slow the process down. Do you see something outside? Do you hear something? Do you think something? How does it start? And they're like, it just happens. And I'm like, but it doesn't just happen. There's a strategy and a process for every single thing that we do as a human being. So what is it? And they go, okay, hold on. Okay, so I saw this girl. So I saw something first. I'm like, okay. Then what? She's like, and then I thought she's much prettier than I am. And then I felt bad. Okay, and then what happened? And then I thought about how everyone in the room is going to pay more attention to her than me. And I started feeling really uncomfortable. And when I started feeling uncomfortable, then I was focusing on how my heart rate was going up and I started panicking. Right? Now, we know exactly how this person creates anxiety. And if we know the process, we can disrupt it. Right? If we don't, we can't. And that's why a lot of people end up on medication, because they keep doing the process just like we're talking about. They keep practicing it over and over and over until it becomes automatic. And your body goes, oh, this is what we have to do to be safe. This is what we have to do when we're in groups of people in order to understand whether or not we're allowed to be there. Right? So I want people to practice changing. I want people to look at this like, oh, this is the biggest gift I can give, not only to myself, but everybody around me, because I'm going to be able to give more. I'm going to be able to show up more. I'm going to be able to connect more intimately. But you have to sign up for the journey, because it's not immediate. And we're all looking for like just that fast thing. The fast thing is what you're already doing. That's the fastest thing available to you, right? And it does take attention and energy to change that. And we should want to. If you're not happy, something's got to give here. And a lot of times it takes people going into a rock bottom, having choices made for them, getting cheated on and broken up with or fired for them to change, right? Or you have to get really sick of yourself and really see like, ooh, I'm being really destructive in my life. Everything I want, I'm severing. And I keep going back to everything I've been told I'm supposed to have. And I'm not doing that anymore. I'd love people to get there sooner for themselves, for the sake of their self-worth, right? Because this is your life. Don't you want it to be beautiful? Don't you want to have great connections? Don't you want to feel purposeful? Don't you want to show up in it and feel proud of how you're showing up in it and feel gratitude for what's in front of you and for your body and for all of the experiences that you get to live? Wouldn't that be nice? That's what this is about.
I love how you turned that question around, and it just makes me think of the fact that, yeah, changes work and it's beautiful and it's worth it, but also there's no ending to the journey. And I feel like the more you learn, or the more you get comfortable being in the process of change and in this sort of discomfort of change, and the more these tools become something that you use on a daily basis, and the ways you notice those thoughts or feelings are becoming more natural, I feel like you appreciate that it is constant work. And I wonder, because many people might put coaches, people like you on a pedestal, being like, okay, like, you know, all these tools and you apply them. Okay, he mentions that it's constant work, but I'm sure that he's in a great place because he's saying he's in a great place. So I wonder, how do you, if you want to share, like in your day-to-day, whenever you approach a challenge in any area of your life, how do you approach this process of change, of noticing, of applying tools in a way that it's fulfilling or that it's exciting, and not being like, okay, another thing that came up because I thought I was fine and I could just appreciate my life?
Totally. And here's the thing to say. There are always going to be peaks and valleys in life, right? There are always going to be highs and lows. That is a part of life. It's not about being fine all the time and being happy all the time. It's actually about being able to go, ooh, okay, I just got dysregulated, and be able to snap back to regulated, right? We're not trying to be a zombie here. Like, there's life experiences. There's a lot of importance in sadness, right? Sadness is telling us to slow down and be reflective. It's not just about trying to feel joy and happiness all the time. But what I want to say as far as like, oh, well, I have more work to do. I don't ever feel like that. This is just how I live. Everything that I did before, that didn't feel like work. It's just how I lived too. When I was having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I had an eating disorder, and I had all of this stuff that was happening. It's just what I did. I didn't think about it. And now I can do this without thinking about it because I've done it so much. Right. And it's just like learning any other skill. If I, put a keyboard in front of someone who's never typed before, and I ask them to write a paragraph, it's going to take them a really long time because they don't know where the A is and they don't know where the P is, and they have to stop and think about it and be reflective. And, oh, wait, where did I leap off? Right. It's going to be really hard for them to stay present within it because it's not a well-oiled machine yet. But if I asked them to type that same paragraph over and over every single day for a month, what's going to happen after 30 days? They'll probably be able to do it almost with their eyes closed, right? From just muscle memory. They know exactly what they're saying. They've gone over it and over it and over it. This is the same, right? None of this is that difficult. Everything is built through repetition, and repetition is practice. So probably one of the best questions I can ask right now to everybody who's listening is, if you are feeling unhappy in your life, what are you practicing? I want you to look at the areas of your life that you feel happy. The people in your life you feel happy with. What are you practicing there that makes it feel good? That's awareness, right? How can we do this, move this good space, this good feeling over to here? What if you met that with this? If you feel completely open and free and you're able to be totally honest and show up with these people, what's happening in your body in that moment? I would imagine a sense of safety, comfort. You feel seen, you feel appreciated. So as a result, you allow yourself to show up and have that experience. But maybe in this experience over here, even with dating, you haven't felt safe in the past, right? Or you don't have enough self-regulation, that you have all of these rules and all these expectations people have to meet before they get to meet that part of yourself because it feels unsturdy. But what if you practiced staying open? What if you practiced staying honest in that space? What would happen then?
It would change.
It would change. Is that worth your time? Right? Yeah. Is that a better use of your time than thinking of how everything's going to constantly go wrong in your life and people are going to fuck you over and you're never going to be happy and you're never going to feel, successful and you're never going to have enough money? Like, is that a better use of your time? Because what reality is that creating?
Tara, I cannot believe that it's been 60 minutes and I have so many questions I could ask you to follow up. But one thing that I know for sure is that you offer so many beautiful tools and workshops, and there's a lot to choose from. For our listeners, if they wanted to start working with them, how do they navigate this whole portfolio of yours, or where should they start? How would you suggest approaching that?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. I always recommend, and we did this together, starting with the identity algorithm, because it's now become my onboarding process when I work with clients. Essentially, I do it over 2 sessions, and I was hearing from everybody, oh my God, I learned more about myself in these last 2 hours than I've learned in years of therapy, right? It's designed to not only teach you how you got to be the way that you are, but by the end of it, you're going to have a total clear understanding of your development, and you're going to have an 18-question audit that lets you know exactly the identity loop that you're running that's currently creating your reality. What's great about this workshop is you can keep revisiting it every single time you're in transition just to see what's calling the shots, right? Because again, we have to be aware of something, right? We have to know what it is that we're trying to change in order to change. So that's always my first recommendation. And then if people, I think you can get that a la carte for like $67, or in the membership itself, that's $47 a month. And you get that plus people-pleasing workshop and authenticity and numbing and avoidance and presence. And you get a live group call. So there's so much to dig your hands into. What I started with is basically all of the issues everyone was coming to me with, right? And I call that the block series. And I start there after the identity algorithm, after we see where we're at, because That's the stuff that's getting in the way. So let's look at it. Let's look at what you're trying to numb away from. Let's look at why you do these habits and behaviors and use self-hypnosis so that we can rewire it. And then we can build, right? And there's so many great tools coming, and I'm really excited. Lots of good stuff for the nervous system and walking meditations and regulation exercises and just everything that you need to feel good in your life is in there.
I love it. And I'm so proud of you. And I love how your brand has grown over the years. And many of the tools have helped me tremendously. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this with me and sharing a little bit of the work that I had a privilege to experience as well with our audience. And this is the last episode of the season. So I feel like it's very special. And I'm really, really happy that we did it.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone got a little something today that they can really take on and use. And who knows, maybe we'll be back.
I hope we will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dziękuję Ci za wysłuchanie Karolina Sobańska Podcast. Program jest dostępny we wszystkich platformach streamingowych, również w wersji wideo. Po szczegóły zajrzyj do opisu.